The Curative Power of a Deep Tan by John Everblest. This is fifth in the series called Eden, God's Magnificent Outdoor Automatic Healthcare System. What you are looking at here is Dr. Rollier's world-famous, life-changing sun cure clinics in Leysen, Switzerland. Hello, I am John Everblest. The first video of this Eden series, The Sun Cure, provided a historical, pictorial, medical record of what the pioneer physicians around the world had to do to successfully cure an incurable, multi-generational global epidemic of TB. Patients were shown pictorially sunbathing, working and playing with bare limbs and lots of exposed skin, summer and winter. Some have asked how the practices of the sun cure can be in harmony with health reform principles. Well, we'll let history itself reconcile the two seemingly conflicting sets of principles. Its reconciliation will be found in the incredible curative power of a deep tan, which we're going to go through. We start with some powerful quotes from the most credible health reformer that I'm aware of that time. Here's the first quote. She says, "The limbs were not formed by our Creator to endure exposure, as was the face. The Lord provided the face with an immense circulation because it must be exposed. He provided also large veins and nerves for the limbs and feet to contain a large amount of the current of human life, that the limbs might be uniformly as warm as the body. They should be so thoroughly clothed as to induce the blood to the extremities. Satan invented the fashions which will leave the limbs exposed, chilling back the life current from its original course." That's from Testimonies for the Church, Volume 2, page 532 to 533. Now, keep in mind, cold weather was part of the curse pronounced upon the earth when Adam and Eve fell. Adam and Eve wore no clothing, just light, and their circulation was perfectly balanced. And they lived in perfect environment with relatively even temperatures. So we now must deal with that curse. She continues, "The extremities are chilled, and the heart has thrown upon it double labor to force the blood into these chilled extremities. And when the blood has performed its circuit through the body and returned to the heart, it is not the same vigorous, warm current which left it. It has been chilled in its passage through the limbs. The heart, weakened by too great labor and poor circulation of poor blood, is then compelled to still greater exertion to throw the blood to the extremities, which are never as healthfully warm as other parts of the body. The heart fails in its efforts, and the limbs become habitually cold. And the blood, which is chilled away from the extremities, is thrown back upon the lungs and brain. And inflammation and congestion of the lungs or the brain is the result. That cannot be good." Now the third quote. "Perfect health depends upon perfect circulation. Special attention should be given to the extremities that they may be as thoroughly clothed as the chest and the region over the heart, where is the greatest amount of heat. Parents who dress their children with the extremities naked, or nearly so, are sacrificing the health and lives of their children to fashion. If these parts are not so warm as the body, the circulation is not equalized. When the extremities, which are remote from the vital organs, are not properly clad, the blood is driven to the head, causing headache or nosebleed. Or there is a sense of fullness about the chest, producing cough or palpitation of the heart on account of too much blood in that locality. Or the stomach has too much blood, causing indigestion. That's Testimonies for the Church, Volume 2, page 531, paragraph 2. So, who knew that cold limbs could be the cause of so many health problems, all from an imbalanced blood circulation? Cough, headache, nosebleed, indigestion, palpitations, weakened heart, lung inflammation and congestion, brain inflammation and congestion. Health is sacrificed, lives are sacrificed. This is serious. Think of the practical applications to ourselves and our patients. The very first thing that comes to my mind is that chronically chilled extremities could clearly be a contributing factor in things like congestive heart failure, maybe even asthma. And what about those who are subject to lung and sinus congestion? Brain workers could certainly benefit from a balanced blood circulation. This can clearly affect our everyday lives without us even realizing it. So the primary health principle? A balanced blood circulation is required. To get that, she said we must induce the blood to the extremities so everything's the same temperature. So how do we do that? In these few quotes, clothing was the way to accomplish that. Everything from the neck on down. But is that the only thing that can induce blood to the extremities? Here's a balancing quote from that same author. Boys accustomed to exercise out of doors become inured or hardened to cold and exposure and are actually less liable to colds when thinly clad than the girls, because the open air seems to be the boy's natural element. So the door has been opened here to the principle of acclimation to cold weather and exposure, like at the sun care clinics of Switzerland. All right, let's continue with the quote. Delicate girls accustom themselves to live indoors and in a heated atmosphere, and yet they go from the heated room out of doors with their limbs and feet seldom better protected from the cold than while remaining in a close, warm room. The air soon chills their limbs and feet and prepares the way for disease. Good grief. This is from the Health Reformer, January 1, 1872, Article A, paragraph 19. These were some of the sun cure patients. How was it possible for these boys in the mountains of Switzerland to keep a balanced circulation in the middle of winter, wearing only the most abbreviated trunks and skates? The answer is simple. Laysan was nearly devoid of wind or breezes, and the intense mountain sunlight was upon them, so they were not chilled. Laysan was unique in that respect. Number two, they acclimated over time, slowly, and hardened to temperature changes. The fire burns brighter in the young than in the elderly. That's number three. The elderly, whose fires do not burn as brightly as the young, should not impose their own temperature requirements upon the youth. In acclimated children, the skin of the young may sometimes be warm to the touch even when outside in the cold, where it is not warm to the touch of the elderly. Now, let's go to the world-famous Battle Creek Sanitarium to illustrate this further. The top image is a group of sick, unacclimated women sitting outside, covered in blankets, at the Battle Creek Sanitarium. The lower image is of male patients at the Battle Creek Sanitarium inside the men's outdoor gymnasium. Those men were surrounded by 12 to 15 foot high wood privacy fencing with barbed wire extending even higher all around the top. These men are in the process of acclimating to sunlight, cold, and weather changes, while the sunlight is healing them, and they are developing a tan. If we do not make active effort to acclimate to the cold and weather changes, we may find ourselves having to clothe ourselves in perpetual darkness like these frail, sickly, unacclimated women in wheelchairs. Is that what you want? It's not what I want. The Battle Creek Sanitarium was the greatest hygienic healthcare institution that has ever been. It was the largest and most well-equipped. It had the greatest physician in our world. It was raised up at God's command. It had over 1,000 different baths and therapies. Yet, sunlight was considered to be one of their most effective treatments. And that's saying something. These boys are acclimated, and the conditions are right. Perhaps the counsel about covering the limbs for better health was not as much focused on the acclimated as it was on the unacclimated. The unacclimated are those that live and work indoors, those who are pale, fragile, delicate, and unable to tolerate colder changes in temperature. Yes, the counsel applies to both groups, yes. Yet those who are acclimating to the cold have a great advantage. They have a much greater tolerance for the cold and weather changes. No matter how acclimated or tanned the patients were at the Battle Creek Sanitarium, they could not do what these boys are doing because, unlike Layson, Battle Creek has an abundance of wind and very little sunlight in the wintertime, and they are not in a high elevation. In order to do what these boys can do, we must be acclimated and the conditions must be right. All right, back to the Alps. This is an illustration of the effect of alpine sun and open-air treatment on the general health. This is a quote from Dr. Rollier. The air and sunbath is the most powerful of all tonics and health restorers. It rebuilds the organism and increases its vitality. Children, strengthened during the summer months by air baths and sunbaths, are hardier and can much better withstand all the illnesses that may affect them during the winter. The same applies to adults. In fact, the general health of Dr. Rollier's patients proved quite remarkable. Visitors often commented on the lack of coughs and colds among children who were so exposed. This is Dr. Rollier speaking. He says, gardening and farming are suitable for convalescent lung and bone cases more than any other kinds of work. They all get so hardened by open air and sunlight, their muscles get so wonderfully developed, and such a high degree of resistance is achieved on their part that they are envied by many a low country laborer. Resistance refers to both disease and weather changes, resistance to both. The second photo there that you see demonstrates health care done right, and that's that same boy same boy 2.5 years later after arrival. The thing that all these patients had in common was that they were tanned. The next few slides will finally begin to explain why a tan is good. Now we get into the meat of it here. The pioneer practitioners of the sun cure treated tuberculosis patients successfully with sunlight and fresh air. And they discovered something quite unexpected having to do with the purpose of a tan. Tanning accelerated healing. It has been a common observation that the cure of a tuberculosis patient parallels roughly the degree of skin pigmentation, tanning. The greater the tanning, the more rapid the cure. This was a common observation among the pioneer practitioners of heliotherapy. They had discovered a spectacular spectacular advancement in healthcare, a paradigm shift. And they also discovered why. The why of the matter greatly simplifies the care of the sick. It created a wonderful paradigm shift that moved the pioneers much closer to God's original Eden healthcare system. And it pushes pharmaceuticals aside. Here's the beginning of the why tanning accelerates healing. This is by Dr. John Harvey Kellogg. The improved circulation, that's the key. The improved circulation of the skin, which accompanies the pigmentation, is always attended by a relief from a multitude of disagreeable symptoms. And if these general light applications are supplemented by other indicated physiological measures and by proper regulation of the diet and general habits of life, multitudes of cases, incurable by other means, may be in the course of a few months restored to excellent health. We got to pay attention to that. These pioneer physicians have shown us the true purpose of a tan, and it is not to protect us from a disease-causing sun. It's to accelerate healing. Did you notice the word always by Dr. Kellogg? You will almost never hear that word coming from the mouth of a physician in describing the effectiveness of any treatment regime. Dr. Kellogg rarely used it as well, but he used it here. The greatest physician in our world used it here. And he wasn't trying to sell anything because you can't sell sunlight. If Dr. Kellogg uses that word here, it would behoove us to pay attention. It means that we may also safely use that word when explaining the healing power of a deep tan to the sick. The pioneers earned the right to use that word here by lifetimes of practical, hands-on, in the trenches, life and death, battle-scarred experience. Let's read it again. The improved circulation of the skin which accompanies the pigmentation is always attended by relief from a multitude of disagreeable symptoms. And if these general light applications are supplemented by other indicated physiological measures and by proper regulation of the diet and general habits of life, multitudes of cases, incurable by other means, may be in the course of a few months restored to excellent health. We borrow their expertise. We lean on that. As amazing as that is, it is not yet the complete why. Here's the rest of the explanation from Dr. Kellogg. Phototherapy is a useful means of producing local and general hyperemia of the skin for relief of the visceral congestion, which is rarely absent in chronic disease. The pallor of the skin, which is nearly always present in chronic invalids, signifies not only anemia of the skin, but necessarily implies also congestion of the viscera, our internal vital organs. The general muscular weakness which accompanies chronic disease prevents exercise, so that the muscles, as well as the skin, are anemic. This is not looking good. The importance of this fact will be recognized when it is considered that the muscles, when active, are capable of holding 1/2 of all the blood in the body. The idle muscle contains not more than 1/4 or 1/6 as much blood as the active muscle. A pale skin and inactive muscles necessarily imply congested viscera. This chronic congestion of vital organs necessarily results in derangement of functions and often in change of structure of these vital internal organs. This is very serious. All this is automatic when we sunbathe and tan. It induces the blood to the extremities, which means clothing is not the only thing that can induce blood to the extremities. A tan can. But it gets even better if we ask the question, how long does that tan-induced blood stay in the extremities? Well, Dr. Kellogg gave us an answer. He says, Hasselbalch noted that the increased vascularity of the skin, like the face, induced by light, lasts for 6 to 9 months. Now that is information we can use. And it sounds like divine forethought to me, doesn't it? A healing tan will carry us through the long winters, both with stored vitamin D and decongested internal organs, etc. If we want to be acclimated to the cold and temperature changes, we need to get tanned. If we want to induce the blood to the extremities, we need to get a thorough tan and regular exercise. If we want to accelerate healing and relieve a multitude of disagreeable symptoms, we need to get tanned. Now, is there a way to accelerate tanning itself? The pioneers had an answer to that as well. They found that a great deal of the tanning is due to the influence of the open air and winds. For example, a passenger on a steamship will tan more quickly and more deeply by standing upon the forecastle of the ship an hour or two daily than by sitting amidship in a deck chair. In other words, sunbathing in the wind will develop a tan faster. Tanning is a major, fundamental treatment modality. It can prevent and reverse disease and relieve a multitude of disagreeable symptoms. This is a fundamental paradigm shift in natural health care. Nature does the heavy lifting in caring for the sick, not the caregiver. God's outdoor healthcare system is automatic. Nothing else comes close. So, speaking candidly here, let's set aside hydrotherapy, saunas, hyperbaric oxygen chambers, and all our man-made therapies, and consider the magnificent healing qualities inherent in sunlight and a thorough tan. All these man-made therapies may be effective, they have their place, but God never intended that they be first and foremost. God has embedded our healthcare into nature itself. Nature is to be first and foremost. It is to be the primary modality, and it's automatic and free. I believe tanning to be one of the biggest guns available in the treatment of the sick. It is a fundamental healing principle. In spite of this overwhelming evidence, there is still an endless supply of ever-changing man-made light therapy devices on the market, all of which are claiming to be the latest and the greatest. And it started with Kellogg's era. It never ends. But there is one simple, timeless light therapy device that history has proven over and over and over again to be incredibly effective. Ready? Here it is. A privacy fence. And history still has more to say about this here. From Dr. Kellogg, the tanned skin is able to defend itself against cold, and to protect the body against disease much more efficiently than the pale, anemic skin which has not been kissed by the sun. What you're looking at here, that's Layson at the sun care clinics. The lesson to be learned here is the incredible healing power that is ours when we live an outdoor lifestyle and get ourselves a deep tan. This is from Leonard Hill. He says, the pigmented skin of one habituated to sun exposure is much more resistant to infection. Febrile rashes such as chickenpox affect least the well-pigmented areas. Regarding the newcomers at an English alpine sanatorium, it is noticeable how quickly they respond to the climatic conditions and in 2 or 3 weeks look and feel in better health. 2 or 3 weeks. The writer, discussing the climate with 4 men, all cases of arrested disease, able to engage in vigorous outdoor sports and looking strong and healthy, found that they agreed that they had never known what it was to be really well and feel the full joy of living till they were impelled by tuberculosis to practice the outdoor life. This is a most compelling reality. The pioneers had this right. Now, this would have been an excellent place to stop, but there is more to consider about bare limbs and an excess of exposed skin. So while we are here, we need to address principles of modesty in the context of the sun cure and sunbathing. What you see in this image are patients at the sun cure clinics of Switzerland during the war on TB. Incredible healing going on here, but they are nearly naked in mixed company and mixed ages. It's hard to understand how this was ever acceptable. Was that the culture back in the world at that time, or was it a necessity for this worldwide pandemic of tuberculosis? Yeah, they could probably separated them, so it might have been a bit of both, the culture and this. Well, let's go back to the Battle Creek Sanitarium at that same time and see how they dealt with modesty and the sun cure. It's rather extreme as compared to this. The top picture is the men's private sunlight therapy in the fenced-in outdoor gymnasium. The lower image is mixed company sunlight therapy at Battle Creek Sanitarium's Gogwak Lake Retreat. Long dresses, long pants, long sleeves. Only a few of the children wore short pants. Christians are supposed to be a peculiar people. Yet in our current culture here in America, it's the lower photo that looks peculiar to us. For a lake outing, but what a witness, right? Not nearly as much healing happening there, but they preserved their modesty, dignity, and witness. No one was caused to stumble. No one needed to blush. Today's culture seems bewitched into believing that near nakedness in public is okay as long as they're near water. This is utter madness. Satan has a counterfeit for everything. This is the counterfeit dress reform. This generation has forgotten how to blush. Christians have no business being a part of this satanic movement. Yeah, it's inconvenient. So what? At the Battle Creek Sanitarium, women had their own outdoor gymnasium. This is their exercise clothing, but they sunbathed in far less clothing. Each outdoor gymnasium had some kind of booths available for complete personal privacy for sunbathing without any clothing at all. This is the only photo I have ever seen inside the ladies' outdoor gymnasium at the Battle Creek Sanitarium. All the fenced-in outdoor gyms had barbed wire at the top. Chain link fences were erected on the outside of the wooden fences about 18 inches away. I'm assuming, I don't know this, but I'm assuming it was to keep prying eyes from looking through the cracks between the boards. Children had their own outdoor gymnasium called the Sunshine Playground. It was on Dr. Kellogg's property. It was also surrounded by a privacy fence, though not as tall. The photos that I do have on this show boys and girls entirely separated. I suspect that boys occupied the playground at separate times or days from girls. Dr. Kellogg used this as a preventorium for the neighborhood children and children of sanitarium guests. A trained adult attendant was always present, females with females, males for males. These are their play clothes. Each group wore much less clothing during their scheduled sunbathing times. No one went completely clothes-free with other people around. The Children's Sunshine Playground was also surrounded by a separate chain link fence to ward off prying eyes through the cracks between the boards. All right, here's the conclusion of the whole matter. God designed us to live in full-body sunlight. Eden was the showcase. Sin changed things, but the benefits of full-body sunlight did not change. The more sunlight we get, the more body parts exposed to it, the greater will be the tan and the faster the healing. The better balanced the circulation and the more abundant will be our health. So, here's the balance. We take the healing principles of Eden, used by the pioneers of the sun cure, and adapt them to our own personal situations using Christian principles and our own individual convictions. We do what we need to do to maintain a balanced blood circulation and to get as much healing sunlight as possible without causing others to stumble. If you remember nothing else from this presentation, please remember this. Tanning accelerates healing. Tanning is always attended by relief from a multitude of disagreeable symptoms. It decongests the organs and head and balances the circulation. Tanning is a major part of God's magnificent outdoor automatic healthcare system. Well, folks, I hope that answered some questions. Thank you for watching this video. Please share it as you can. Thank you very much. God is good.